The wind howled like a beast through the broken shutters of Ilara's cottage, whistling cold against the stone walls. She sat silently by the hearth, her hands clenched tightly around a frayed piece of linen, her mother's old apron, the only thing she hadn't burned for firewood. Hunger gnawed at her belly, but she'd grown used to it. What she wasn't used to was the silence of her father, pacing back and forth, eyes shadowed and full of something darker than fear. The door creaked open before she could speak. 2 men stood outside, tall, cloaked. Their eyes gleamed yellow in the gloom, reflecting the firelight like a predator's. Their coats bore the mark of the moonclaw, an ancient sigil with a curved claw slashed across a crescent moon. Wolves. Ilara's heart dropped. "No," she whispered, standing. "You promised, Da. You said—" "I had no choice," her father snapped, not looking at her. "The debts—" "You sold me," she said. Her voice was hollow like the pit inside her chest. "You sold your daughter for silver." One of the wolves stepped forward, pulling a small pouch from his belt. The dull clink of coins echoed like death knells in the silence. "She is of age," he said, in a voice rough as gravel. "She comes with us. The Alpha has decreed it." "She's not a wolf," her father muttered, eyes flickering toward her for the first time. "But her mother's blood ran close to the old line. That's what they told me, that she might—" Ilara didn't hear the rest. The other man, silent until now, gripped her arm, his hand like iron. She tried to pull away, but it was useless. She wasn't strong, not anymore. Not after months of starvation and watching her world fall apart. Her brother had died in the last winter. Her mother had succumbed to fever before that. And now her father, her last thread of family, had traded her like livestock. As they dragged her past the edge of the village, the ground turned to mud beneath her bare feet. A fine mist blanketed the hills, and trees rose like black towers in the distance. She looked back once, just once, to see her father standing there, holding the silver like it meant something. His eyes didn't follow her, only the wolves did. "What do you want from me?" she asked, breathless, stumbling on a root. Neither answered. The forest swallowed them whole, thick with pine and shadow. Owls cried from above. Branches snapped underfoot. Ilara's breath came in short, panicked bursts, the cold air slicing her lungs. Still they pushed her onward, silent, relentless. After what felt like hours, they reached a clearing. A massive stone arch stood in the center, ancient and covered in moss. Beyond it, a road of cobbled stone led into darkness. The first man stepped aside and looked at her. His yellow eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not run, do not fight." "And if I do?" She spat, chin raised, though her legs trembled. He tilted his head. "Then we let the forest deal with you." Something howled far off in the distance. They passed beneath the arch. Ilara felt it like a shiver through her bones. Something changed the moment she stepped through, like the world had drawn a breath and was waiting. A strange warmth pulsed against her wrist. She looked down. A faint mark shimmered there, like a bruise in the shape of a crescent moon. She hadn't seen it before. She didn't know what it meant. But something inside her whispered, "You've stepped into a place you won't leave the same." And as the mist thickened and the shadows deepened, Ilara made herself a silent promise. "They may have bought me with silver, but I won't be theirs." The fortress loomed like a jagged crown over the treetops, its stone towers cloaked in morning mist. Ilara stared up at it, her feet raw from the march, her limbs numb with cold and exhaustion. The walls stretched high into the sky, wrapped in thick vines and guarded by silent, motionless figures along the ramparts. Wolves, some shifted, some not, all bore the mark of the moonclaw. As they passed through the outer gate, the heavy iron doors groaned open, revealing a courtyard alive with movement. Warriors trained with blunted weapons, their snarls echoing against the stone. Others carried meat, firewood, or pails of water, their eyes flicking briefly to Ilara before looking away. No one smiled. No one welcomed her. "She'll sleep in the lower cells," said the silent one, whose name she still didn't know. Ilara glared at him. "I'm not a prisoner." He didn't answer, just kept walking. They led her down a dark passage lit by torches, the walls damp with moss. The air grew colder the deeper they went, and the earthy scent of wolf filled the space. When they finally stopped, he opened a wooden door and gestured inside. It wasn't a cell, not really, but it wasn't a room either. A narrow cot sat in the corner with a thin wool blanket. A bowl of water rested on the floor. There were no windows. Ilara crossed her arms. So, this is what Silver bought. A cage with a pillow. You'll have better quarters after the claiming, he said. She frowned. The what? He didn't respond. The door shut behind her. Left alone, Ilara sat on the cot, staring at the flickering torchlight dancing across the stones. Every muscle ached, her stomach hollow, but her mind spun with questions. Why her? Why did they drag a human girl across the forest to a fortress of wolves? And what in the goddess's name was the claiming? The sound of footsteps pulled her from thought. A soft knock. Then the door creaked open. An older woman entered, her silver hair braided tightly behind her head. Her clothes were simple, but her presence commanded respect. You must be Ilara, she said gently. I must be, Ilara replied, guarded. I'm Maeve. I tend to the younglings and serve the Luna's quarters, though— She paused, eyes scanning Ilara's worn face. There hasn't been a Luna in many years. Ilara's pulse quickened. I'm not whatever you think I am. Maeve tilted her head. That mark on your wrist says otherwise. Ilara pulled her sleeve down, hiding the faint crescent. I didn't ask for it, she muttered. No Luna ever does, Maeve said. But the pact doesn't run on desire. It runs on blood, bond, and the moon's will. Before Ilara could respond, a horn sounded in the distance, long, low, and filled with tension. Maeve's expression shifted. He's returned. Who? The Alpha King. The name sent a chill through her spine. She'd heard it in whispers, in legends. A warrior draped in shadows, a wolf feared even by his own kind. Ilara stood. What does he want with me? Maeve looked at her for a long moment. That, she said quietly, is what we all want to know. The hallway buzzed with sudden movement, guards shifting into place, voices low and hurried. From her doorway, Ilara caught a glimpse of a figure stepping through the inner gates. Broad-shouldered, cloaked in black fur, his presence sucked the warmth from the air. He didn't glance her way, but she felt it, an invisible pull between them, something ancient, something dangerous. Her fingers drifted unconsciously to her wrist, where the mark burned just slightly beneath the skin. Whatever lay ahead, it was no longer about Silver. It was about power. And the Wolf King had just come home. The sun had not yet fully risen when the fortress erupted with noise. Boots thudded against stone, banners were hoisted, and the air buzzed with the energy of something shifting. Ilara stood at the narrow window slit in the wall outside her quarters, watching as warriors gathered in the main courtyard below. Their movements were swift, disciplined. There was no doubt. The Alpha King had returned. She hadn't seen him clearly the day before, just a silhouette cloaked in fur and command. But now, as the gates opened once more, Ilara saw the man who ruled the most feared pack in the northern wilds. Kael. He dismounted a massive black steed, armor gleaming faintly beneath his cloak. His hair was dark as night, cropped short, and his jaw clenched like stone. Even from a distance, his presence sent a chill through her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The pack moved around him like ripples in a lake, their eyes never quite meeting his. There was respect there, yes, but also something else, fear, reverence. Silence fell as he walked across the courtyard, accompanied by 3 high-ranking wolves. One of them was the grim-faced warrior who had dragged Ilara from her home. Another was tall and lean with grey in his beard, his eyes sharp as broken glass. "The council awaits," the greybeard said. Kael nodded once, his gaze scanning the courtyard like a hunter scenting wind. He paused. For the briefest moment, his eyes locked on Ilara. It was just a second, but it froze her blood, not because of malice, but because of recognition. She stepped back from the window instinctively, her breath caught in her throat. Why had he looked at her like that? She was nothing. A girl bought for silver. A mistake. Yet something in that stare had said otherwise. Later that morning, Maeve returned with fresh clothes, simple but warmer than the rags Ilara had worn since the journey. She folded them on the cot, then looked at her with the sort of gaze only older women could manage, sharp but not unkind. "You're summoned," Maeve said, "to the gathering hall." Ilara's heart stumbled. "Why? You ask too many questions for someone the moon has already marked. I didn't choose this," she snapped. "No one said you did," Maeve replied, turning away. "But the mark doesn't care." When Ilara entered the great hall, its vaulted ceiling swallowed her. Fire roared in twin hearths, banners hung high from the rafters, and wolves lined the walls in silent watch. At the far end stood the Alpha King, his back to her, speaking quietly with his council. She walked slowly, pulse pounding. Every step echoed. He turned. For a heartbeat, silence. Kyle's eyes, ice blue and merciless, met hers fully this time. "This is her?" he asked, voice low and edged with iron. The greybeard stepped forward. "Yes, my king. The girl from the healer's line. She bears the mark." Ilara opened her mouth to protest, but something in Kyle's stare rooted her in place. He walked toward her, calm, measured. A wolf sizing up a threat or a claim. "You are not a wolf," he said, stopping only inches away. "No," she answered, forcing her chin up. "I'm not. But the moon chose you." He looked at her wrist. "That mark doesn't appear by accident. I didn't ask for it." Kyle's lips barely twitched. "Neither did I ask for a broken pack. Yet, here we are." She said nothing. The fire crackled. Somewhere beyond the walls, a distant howl rose. Kyle turned to the council. "Prepare the ceremony." Ilara's stomach dropped. "What ceremony?" He looked back at her. "The claiming," he said. "You will be Luna of Moonclaw." The hall erupted in murmurs. Ilara stared at him, disbelief clawing up her throat. "You don't even know me." Kyle's voice was cold, final. "I don't need to." Ilara's heart raced as she was led into the ceremonial chamber, a circular hall lined with ancient stone, and the carved faces of long-dead alphas. Torches flickered, casting shadows that danced across the walls. The air was thick with incense, earthy and sharp, making her stomach twist with nerves. Wolves filled the room, some sitting, some standing, all watching her. Their eyes glimmered gold and amber, unblinking. A high-pitched hum began, deepening into a chant that vibrated in her chest. She stumbled, unsure whether to kneel, bow, or run. The Alpha King's voice cut through the sound, low and commanding. "Step forward." Her legs shook, but she obeyed. Every step echoed like a drumbeat, drawing attention from every corner of the hall. The council members turned to watch. Even the warriors guarding the chamber had gone silent. Kyle's gaze followed her, icy and unreadable. He was still seated on the raised dais at the far end, black fur draped over his shoulders, his posture unyielding. He didn't rise. He didn't speak again. He simply observed, the weight of his presence pressing against her like the walls themselves. A circle of elders formed around her. One of them, a woman with silver hair braided tightly, stepped forward, hands extended. "The moon has chosen," she intoned. "By the bond of blood and pact, the Luna shall be called forth." Ilara's pulse thundered. "I'm not," she began, but her words died. The silver-haired elder grabbed her wrists gently, pressing her palms together. A warm sensation coursed through Ilara, starting at the skin and spreading deep into her bones. The mark on her wrist shimmered faintly, and a whisper seemed to echo in her mind. "You belong." "No," she gasped, trying to pull away. Kyle's voice cut through the chant, sharper than the edge of a blade. "Resistance is irrelevant." Ilara froze. His words were not cruel, but they carried an authority she could not argue with. The room seemed to contract, pressing in on her from all sides. Every wolf, every council member, every shadowed corner bore witness. The warmth on her wrists intensified, threading along her arms like living fire. She tried to fight it, to tear away, but her muscles refused. Her heart hammered. Something deep inside her responded. Not willingly, but instinctively. The chanting rose faster, louder, echoing through the stone chamber. Wolves shifted slightly, their ears pricked, tails low and rigid. The air pulsed with an energy she could feel vibrating through the soles of her feet. "You will serve the pack," Kyle said. His eyes held hers, unyielding. "Whether you wish it or not." Tears stung her eyes, frustration mingling with fear. She wanted to scream, to flee, to strike, but every instinct told her she couldn't. The bond, the mark, the moon itself, was stronger than her defiance. The circle of elders lowered their hands, and the warmth receded. Ilara's breathing was ragged. Her pulse thundered, leaving her dizzy, yet something had shifted. She could feel the pack around her, hear their tension, their whispers, their silent questioning. Kyle stood. The room seemed to hold its breath. "It is done," he said simply. "She is the Luna of Moonclaw." The murmurs erupted like a storm. Some wolves bowed their heads, others growled in challenge, but all acknowledged the truth of his words. Ilara's knees felt weak. She pressed a hand to her wrist, where the mark still glimmered faintly. She had not chosen this life, yet the moment had changed something irrevocably. The pack had been claimed, and by extension she had been claimed too. And though her mind screamed with fear, a small, unwilling part of her felt the pull of the bond, threading through the shadows, curling into the depths of her chest. Kyle's gaze met hers one last time before he turned away. She did not understand it, but she felt it, an unspoken warning, a silent promise, and a truth she could not yet name. The ceremony ended, leaving the hall thick with tension. Whispers of awe and doubt rippled through the pack. Ilara clenched her fists. The night outside was waiting, and with it, the weight of a destiny she had never asked for. Ilara woke to a dull ache in her shoulders, the remnants of the claiming still pulsing faintly across her wrists. The hall outside her chamber hummed with quiet activity, the pack moving in careful coordination, their eyes occasionally flicking toward her door. She sat on the edge of her cot, her fingers brushing over the faint crescent that still shimmered, almost imperceptibly. Maeve entered silently, carrying a small tray with water and a simple breakfast. Her expression was calm, but her eyes betrayed concern. "You slept well?" she asked, setting the tray down. Ilara shrugged. "Sleep doesn't come easy when your entire life has been sold." Maeve studied her. "It wasn't silver that bought you, child. It was the moon, and it has chosen." Ilara's stomach twisted. "Chosen for what? I can barely walk without fear. How am I supposed to lead anyone?" Maeve sighed. "You will not lead them as a warrior leads. A Luna's power is different. You will feel their pain, their fear, their hunger. The mark is more than a symbol. It is a bridge." Ilara swallowed, unease coiling in her chest. She had been told the pack was broken, wild, unpredictable. And yet here she was, tethered to it by a mark she did not choose, bound to a destiny she did not understand. "You need to learn quickly," Maeve continued. "The Alpha King is patient, but not forgiving. And the pack—" Her eyes softened. "They need you, even if they do not yet know it." The sound of boots on stone drew their attention. Ilara turned to see Beta Lorcan stepping into the room, his dark eyes studying her with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. "You are awake," he said, voice low. "Good. We have much to discuss, and time is short." Ilara's gaze met his, wary. "Discuss? About what?" "About survival," he replied bluntly. "You are bound to this pack now, Luna. That means their safety is tied to your choices." "I don't even know them," she muttered. Lorcan's lips pressed into a thin line. "You will. And you will learn fast. This bond, it is not just about spirit. It is about action, protection, understanding. If you fail, the consequences are real." Ilara nodded, though fear gripped her chest. She felt the weight of the mark, pulsing faintly, a reminder of the unseen tether that connected her to the pack. Over the next hours, she followed Lorcan through the fortress, learning the names of young wolves, observing their movements, noticing the way they flinched at authority and craved guidance. The deeper she walked, the more she understood the fragility of what she now held. They reached the training yard, where young warriors practiced combat. Their movements were precise, fluid, and yet there was tension in every stance. Lorcan gestured toward a group of pups in the corner, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. "These are the younglings," he said quietly. "They've lost their mothers. You must understand their pain before you can guide them." Ilara knelt, letting her hands brush the dirt beside them. She felt a ripple, faint, almost imperceptible, through her mark. The pups stiffened, ears twitching. She exhaled slowly. They could sense her, recognize her energy. I don't know if I can," she whispered, voice breaking. Lorcan placed a heavy hand on her shoulder. "You can. You have no choice but to try." That night, alone in her chamber, Ilara traced the crescent on her wrist. The glow pulsed slightly, almost like a heartbeat. She realized then that the pack was no longer distant, no longer separate from her. Every beat of their hearts, every murmur of their minds had begun to weave into her own. Fear remained, but beneath it something else stirred. A tentative strength, fragile yet undeniable. The mark was more than silver, more than law. It was a bond, and it would not be broken, even if she wanted it to. Outside the walls, the forest whispered. The wind carried distant howls that tugged at her very core. And in the shadows, she felt it. The pull of a destiny that was no longer hers alone, but the pack's and the Alpha King's, entwined with her very soul. Ilara woke to the echo of distant howls, low and mournful, carrying a weight she could feel deep in her chest. She dressed quickly, pulling on the rough wool garments provided by Maeve, and stepped into the crisp morning air. The fortress courtyard was quiet now, but the tension lingered like a shadow, settling over the young wolves moving in careful clusters. Maeve approached her, face grave. "You must understand the pack's history before you can lead them," she said, voice steady but heavy with sorrow. "They have lost more than you know. Every mother, every Luna who should have guided them, gone." Ilara swallowed, her fingers tightening around the strap of the satchel she carried. "How?" she asked, fear threading her tone. "Disease, raiders, betrayal," Maeve said softly, "and the moon marked no one to replace them. They were left motherless." Ilara's heart clenched. She had known loss. Her own family had traded her for silver, but the scale of this grief was different. It wasn't one life broken, it was generations. The young wolves flinched at her gaze as she walked past them. Their eyes held both curiosity and caution, suspicion born of absence, of loss, of being left alone without guidance. Lorcan appeared beside her, silent as the shadows cast by the high walls. "They test you already," he said. "Even the ghosts of the past sense the bond forming." Ilara glanced at him. "Ghosts?" "Not spirits, not literally," Lorcan said, voice low. "But their memories linger. The way they move, the way they growl, the silence in their eyes, it is all a whisper of what they have lost. You cannot ignore it." Her steps slowed. She could feel the pulse of the pack beneath her skin, faint but undeniable. The mark on her wrist throbbed in tandem with her heartbeat, pulling her toward the younglings in the courtyard. She knelt beside a small grey pup, trembling, fur matted and dirty. "It's okay," she whispered, reaching out. I'm here." The pup froze, ears flat, nostrils flaring, then slowly inched closer. The moment was fragile, almost imperceptible, yet something inside Ilara stirred. She realized that these wolves, though motherless, could sense her intention. They could feel her fear and determination, both tied together in one shaky pulse. Maeve watched from the doorway, lips pressed tight. "They will test you endlessly. Some will bite, some will flee, some will refuse to obey. You must see all of it and endure. Only then will the bond hold." Ilara nodded, though her chest felt tight with exhaustion and worry. She had thought the greatest struggle would be surviving the Alpha King or the rituals. Now she understood. It was the pack itself, fractured and wary, that required her strength more than anything else. A howl rose in the distance, long and mournful. The younglings froze, then flinched again, ears flattening. The memory of their mothers, of safety lost and guidance never received, rippled through them like a tide. Ilara reached out again, this time placing a hand gently on the nearest pup's shoulder. The warmth spread not just through her, but through the pup, through the others clustered nearby. "You feel it, don't you?" she whispered. Lorcan's eyes were narrow but approving. "Yes, that's the beginning. Their spirits reach you because you are the mark they have waited for." Ilara's chest tightened. She had not wanted this, had not chosen it, yet she felt the pull, the responsibility, the connection, the weight of generations depending on her. The pack's grief was real, tangible, and suffocating, but in it she also sensed hope, fragile and tentative. She rose, looking over the courtyard. The young wolves no longer flinched away completely. They still watched, wary and cautious, but something had shifted. The mark had bonded her to them. For the first time, Ilara felt the gravity of her purpose. The Alpha King had not chosen a servant, he had chosen a bridge, and the ghosts of the motherless were waiting for her to guide them. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Ilara followed Lorcan through the fortress halls, her steps tentative but steady. Each corner revealed another aspect of pack life she had never imagined. Young wolves sparring under the watchful eyes of elders, howls echoing in practice, and the low hum of a ritual chant carried from the inner chamber. Maeve waited near the training yard, her silver hair gleaming faintly in the morning light. She handed Ilara a worn leather vest. "You will not be a fighter today," Maeve said, "but you must understand their rhythms, their fears. Begin with connection." Ilara hesitated, fingers brushing the edge of the vest. "Connection? With them?" "Yes," Maeve replied. "Without it, even strength is meaningless." The yard was quiet now, younglings grouped together, eyes wary. Lorcan stepped beside her. "They test you in ways weapons cannot measure," he said. "Patience, presence, understanding. If you fail them, they fail the pack." Ilara knelt, extending her hand toward a small grey pup trembling in the shadows. The creature's amber eyes locked onto hers, and she could feel the tension radiating from it, sharp as stone. She took a deep breath, placing a palm lightly on its back. The pup flinched but did not retreat. "Good," Lorcan said quietly. "Feel them. Let their fear and uncertainty guide your actions, not your own doubts." Hours passed in the yard. Ilara followed the rhythms of the pack, learning the way they moved, how they responded to commands, how the younger wolves mirrored the older ones. She learned to anticipate their reactions, to understand a growl or a stance before it became dangerous. Her body ached, her hands were raw, but something inside her began to align with the pack's heartbeat. Maeve approached, carrying a satchel of herbs. "We heal too," she said. "A Luna must know how to soothe, to mend, to bridge the gap between pain and trust." She motioned toward a pup, limping slightly. "Begin there." Ilara knelt again, kneading the tense muscles carefully. The pup whined softly, eyes fluttering as warmth spread from her hands. A subtle ripple coursed through the yard. The pack sensed her growing presence. Even the older wolves tilted their heads slightly, observing, acknowledging. "Notice their hesitations," Maeve instructed. "Notice what they do not say. That is as important as any spoken command." The afternoon sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the cobblestones. Ilara's palms were calloused, her back sore, yet she felt a spark she had never experienced before. A fragile thread of connection weaving through the pack, through her, binding them together. Lorcan's voice broke her reverie. "You've begun to earn their trust," he said. "Not fully, but enough for them to listen. They will challenge you again, harder." "Do not fear it." Ilara nodded, exhaustion mixing with determination. She realized the pack's survival depended not on her strength or skill alone, but on her ability to feel them, to act through empathy as much as instinct. Every heartbeat, every twitch of fur, every wary glance was a lesson in leadership, in understanding. Night approached, and the younglings gathered near the hearth, eyes glowing in the firelight. Ilara sat among them, the mark on her wrist faintly warm, pulsing with the rhythm of the pack. The elders' shadows stretched across the walls, silent witnesses to her tentative progress. Maeve's voice came softly, almost a whisper. "Tomorrow you will lead them in the first hunt under the moon's guidance. Tonight, rest and feel what it means to be their bridge." Ilara pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the steady thrum of the pack's heartbeat resonating through her own. She had not chosen this path. She had been sold, bound, claimed. But in this moment, as the wolves settled around her and the fortress hummed with life, she understood the first truth of her role. It was not strength alone that made her Luna. It was heart, and hers was learning to beat in time with a pack that had waited for her all along. The night air was heavy with anticipation, carrying the scent of wet earth and pine. Ilara stood at the edge of the training grounds, her hands clenched tightly around the hilt of a short practice blade. The moon hung low, enormous and blood-red, casting everything in an eerie glow. The young wolves circled around her, their amber eyes bright with curiosity and apprehension. Maeve stepped beside her, voice calm but firm. "Tonight you lead them in the Red Moon trial. This is not just a test of skill. It is a test of spirit." Ilara swallowed, her throat dry. "Spirit? I don't even know how to lead them in the dark, let alone fight." "You will learn," Maeve said, "and you will survive if you trust the bond and the mark." Lorcan approached from the shadows, his dark eyes fixed on her. "They will resist. They will test your patience. Remember, the trial is as much about them as it is about you." The younglings stirred, some growling softly, others shifting nervously from paw to paw. Ilara's chest tightened. The weight of responsibility pressed down, heavy and unforgiving. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to stand taller. The horn sounded long and resonant, signaling the start of the trial. The young wolves charged into the forest, and Ilara followed, the moonlight painting shadows across the underbrush. Her pulse raced with every step. She could feel the pack's heartbeat through her mark, steady and insistent, guiding her forward. At first, she struggled to keep pace. The wolves darted in unpredictable patterns, disappearing into the trees and reappearing almost impossibly fast. She stumbled over roots and rocks, cursing silently under her breath. Fear prickled along her spine. She felt the pull of the mark, urging her to synchronize, to anticipate, but instinct alone wasn't enough. A sharp bark from one of the pups drew her attention. It had become trapped between two gnarled trees, its paws scraping against the dirt. Ilara rushed forward, her heart hammering. She reached out, voice steady despite the panic. "Don't be afraid, I've got you." The pup froze, then pressed against her, trembling. Relief surged, and for the first time she felt the pull of connection more than fear. She guided it back to the trail, and the others fell into place around her. But the trial was far from over. A sudden rustle in the underbrush caused the pack to scatter, leaves whipping around them like a storm. Ilara's vision narrowed, breath quickening. The red moon overhead seemed to pulse, throwing crimson light across every shadow. She stumbled again, nearly falling, but Lorcan's voice cut through the chaos. "Focus. Your mark, your bond. Lead them, Luna." She drew a deep breath, centering herself. Closing her eyes for a moment, she felt the pack around her. Not just their presence, but their emotions, their fears, their trust tethered to her. Her steps became surer, movements guided by instinct and empathy rather than clumsy fear. One by one, the younglings matched her pace, following her through the trees with hesitant precision. She realized the trial was not just about guiding them, but about synchronizing her spirit with theirs. By the time the forest cleared and the moon's crimson glow dimmed slightly, Ilara stood in the center of the training ground, the pack gathered obediently around her. Breathing hard, sweat mingling with dirt on her skin, she felt both exhaustion and exhilaration. Lorcan approached, his expression unreadable. "You have passed," he said quietly. "Not perfectly, but enough for them to respect you." Ilara lowered her gaze, relief washing over her in waves. The Red Moon trial had tested more than her skill. It had tested her heart, her connection, and her willingness to become more than the girl who had been sold for silver. And though the path ahead remained uncertain, one truth was clear. The pack was beginning to see her as their Luna. Ilara stood at the edge of the forest, her chest heaving, pulse still quick from the Red Moon trial. The younglings gathered around her, eyes bright with a mixture of awe and lingering fear. She had led them through the chaos of the trial, but the memory of the rustling shadows of nearly losing a pup lingered in her mind like an unhealed wound. She knelt, brushing a trembling grey pup behind its ears. The creature looked up at her, amber eyes wide and trusting. For the first time she felt the subtle pull of the mark in a new way, more than guidance, more than connection. It was strength, raw and unrefined, coursing beneath her skin like liquid fire. A sudden growl snapped her attention upward. A rogue wolf, larger than any she had seen, stood on the ridge above, hackles raised, eyes glinting with malice. It had been exiled from another pack, drawn here by whispers of weakness. The younglings froze, tails low, muscles tensing instinctively. Ilara's heart hammered, fear flaring, but she squared her shoulders. The mark pulsed, thrumming against her wrist, and she realized she didn't need to fight alone. She was the bond, she was their strength. "Stay behind me," she whispered to the pups. The rogue lunged, teeth bared, and Ilara's body reacted before her mind fully processed the motion. She stepped forward, hands raised, calling on the energy that coursed through her. A sound, low and resonant, emanated from her throat, neither human nor wolf, but something in between. The younglings froze, then, encouraged by her presence, began a synchronized growl, their small voices blending with hers. The rogue faltered, taken aback by the unison, the unexpected ferocity radiating from a human girl bound to a wolf pack. Ilara felt the warmth surge from her mark, spreading through her arms and chest. Fear was still there, but it was tempered now with purpose, with a growing sense of authority. She stepped closer, letting the bond between her and the younglings anchor the moment, their courage rising through her own. The rogue hesitated, snarling, circling. Ilara's gaze sharpened. "You leave, or you face all of us," she said, voice steady, the vibration carrying through the forest. For the first time, the rogue considered the pack as more than prey. Their energy, their bond, radiated outward, unyielding. It retreated slowly, hackles lowered, and disappeared into the trees. Ilara exhaled, the tension draining from her body in a long, shuddering breath. The pups crowded closer, brushing against her legs, tails wagging cautiously. Their eyes shone with admiration and trust. They had seen her strength, her presence, and in that instant she understood something essential. Leadership was not domination, it was the courage to stand when the pack needed her most. Lorcan appeared from the shadows, his expression unreadable. "Well done," he said. "You didn't just protect them, you commanded them and they followed." Ilara nodded, still trembling slightly. I felt it. Their fear, their trust, it's inside me now." Lorcan's lips pressed into a faint line. "That is what it means to be a Luna, to feel the pack, to channel it. Tonight, you roared, not as a girl, but as the bond they needed." The younglings circled her, nudging and pressing against her, their warmth tangible. Ilara closed her eyes briefly, letting the rhythm of their hearts, their energy, flow through her. She had been sold for silver, brought to this place against her will. Yet now, bound by mark and spirit, she had discovered a power she had never known, a command born of connection, courage, and instinct. The forest was quiet again, save for the rustling leaves and the distant howl of wolves still awake. The red moon had faded slightly, leaving its crimson hue lingering like a promise. Ilara's first roar had not been loud in sound, but it had echoed in the hearts of the pack, and she knew deep within that the journey was only beginning. A Luna had been born. The fire in the great hall burned low, casting long shadows across the stone floor. Ilara sat beside the hearth, her fingers tracing the faint crescent on her wrist. Despite the success of the Red Moon trial, unease coiled in her stomach. The pack had accepted her cautiously, but Kyle remained distant, his eyes unreadable, as if holding secrets she was not yet meant to know. Lorcan approached, footsteps soft on the stones. "You seek answers," he said, voice quiet, almost conspiratorial. "I know why." Ilara looked up, her brows furrowed. Why does he keep me at arm's length? Why does he look at me like I'm a weapon instead of a person? Lorcan hesitated, then nodded toward the corner where an old chest rested, its wood cracked with age. He was betrayed, Lorcan said. Before you arrived, Kyle chose a Luna, someone to guide the pack, to heal them. She did not survive the politics of our world. Ilara blinked. Did not survive? You mean, yes, Lorcan said, voice low. Betrayal. The woman trusted the wrong allies. The pack fractured. Many of the young wolves you see now, their fear, their mistrust, it comes from that night. Kale has been wounded ever since, not just in body, but in heart. The revelation hit Ilara harder than any physical blow. She had thought the Alpha's distance was coldness, arrogance, or perhaps disinterest, but it was pain. Pain wrapped in armor, cloaked in duty and sharpened by loss. Why tell me this now, she asked. Because, Lorcan said, stepping closer, you will face similar trials. You must understand him if you are to lead the pack alongside him, and you must understand him if you are to survive the bond, for his heart is not easily reached. Ilara's chest tightened. I didn't ask for this. No one does, Lorcan replied, voice steady. But you cannot escape it. She pressed her fingers to her lips, thinking. Every glance Kale had given her, every silence, every unspoken warning, it all made sense now. The distance she had interpreted as coldness was caution, the careful restraint of a man who had loved and lost, who had seen betrayal crush even the strongest hearts. He's afraid I'll betray him too, she whispered almost to herself. Lorcan nodded. Perhaps. But he is also afraid you might heal what was broken. Ilara looked down at her hands. The mark burned faintly, the bond pulling her attention back to the pack. The younglings slept fitfully in the corner, murmuring softly in their dreams, unaware of the history that haunted the walls of the fortress. You see now, Lorcan said, that your role is not only to guide them, but to be patient with him. The pack will test you. The Alpha will test you, and in time the wounds of the past will surface. You must be ready. Ilara nodded slowly, resolve hardening within her. Knowledge of Kyle's betrayal did not weaken her. It illuminated the path ahead. She realized that she would have to earn his trust, not command it. She would have to step into the shadow of loss and show him that she was no threat, that she was something the pack and he had waited for. She exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the revelation settle. Pain and fear had guided the Alpha, shaping his every decision, every glance, every choice. Understanding that gave her a new perspective, a strategy she had never considered before. Kyle entered the hall without sound, his presence still commanding, still distant. He paused near the hearth, eyes briefly meeting hers, and for the first time she felt a spark of mutual recognition, something fragile, unspoken, yet potent. The Alpha King's past had been laid bare before her, and though she had not chosen this path, she knew now that she could navigate it, with courage, patience, and the bond that tethered her, not only to the pack, but to him. The night stretched on, shadows twisting against the walls. Ilara's mind raced, but she felt something she had not felt before, understanding. The Alpha King was not invincible, and perhaps neither was she, but together they could endure what had broken others. The forest beyond Moonclaw Fortress had grown restless, the winds carrying scents of smoke and tension. Ilara moved through the shadows, senses sharp, her mind alert. The younglings trailed behind her cautiously, ears twitching at every rustle. Something was off. She could feel it in the pull of her mark, a low hum of anxiety threading through the pack. Lorcan appeared beside her, silent as the mist. You feel it too, he said, eyes scanning the tree line. Ilara nodded. Yes, something's coming. They've been planning for months, Lorcan continued. Humans from the neighboring lands, noblemen with silver, fire, and hatred. They intend to destroy the pack, to claim these lands, to end everything that lives here. They believe wolves are weak. Ilara's stomach clenched. Why now? The pack is healing, Lorcan said grimly, and they fear it. They want to strike before the bond solidifies, before a Luna fully awakens. Ilara swallowed. And what can we do? Prevent them from reaching the younglings, Lorcan replied. We warn the Alpha. We prepare. The warning reached Kyle quickly. He was already at the courtyard, his presence radiating authority. The pack gathered around him, tails low but alert, ears pricked. He turned toward Ilara, his ice-blue eyes sharp, unreadable. "You have sensed them," he said. His voice was steady, commanding. "Then we act. Lead the younglings to the safety of the inner sanctum." "I will meet them at the gates." Ilara nodded, heart hammering. She called softly to the younglings, guiding them through the corridors, her hands brushing fur and reassuring them. Their trust in her was fragile but growing. She felt the hum of the pack through her mark, their combined fear and hope tethering her strength. Outside the fortress, the human threat materialized. A small cavalry force advanced, silver glinting under the weak sun. Ilara felt the younglings stiffen, bodies rigid, yet under her guidance, they moved with purpose, their instincts and her presence intertwined. She whispered encouragements, directing them along hidden paths, avoiding patrols, ensuring none were left exposed. Her heart pounded, but there was clarity in every decision. When Kyle appeared at the gates, his warriors flanking him, the humans faltered, unsure. The fortress walls loomed over them, the air thick with the tension of an imminent clash. Ilara's mark pulsed with urgency, guiding her attention to every corner, every movement, every breath of the pack. A rogue shout from the human lines drew her gaze. One of their leaders attempted to break formation, but the Alpha King moved with precision, his commands cutting through the air. The pack shifted, coordinated, wolves and warriors alike responding to a rhythm only Kyle and the Luna could maintain. Ilara's first true test had arrived. The younglings followed her lead, not blindly but with trust, their small forms agile and determined. Her mark pulsed, drawing on their energy, melding with her own courage. A clash erupted near the eastern wall, silver against steel. Ilara stayed with the younglings, directing them to safety, her hands steady, voice low and commanding. Every instinct she had honed in the Red Moon trial now guided her. By the time the skirmish had subsided, the humans had retreated, their confidence shattered by the coordinated strength of the pack. Ilara exhaled, exhaustion mingling with relief. The younglings pressed close to her, breathing heavily, but safe. Kyle approached, silent, his presence overwhelming. He studied her, ice-blue eyes narrowing, then nodded once. "You led them well," he said. "Better than I expected. They trust you." Ilara lowered her gaze, chest heaving, yet a spark of pride flared inside her. The pack had survived, the younglings were safe, and she had discovered something fundamental. Leadership was not about command alone. It was about presence, trust, and the courage to face threats alongside those who depended on you. And tonight, she had done both. The night sky was thick with smoke and tension. Ilara ran through the inner corridors of the fortress, guiding the younglings toward hidden passages she had memorized during previous drills. Their small paws scuffed against stone, ears flattened in fear, but under her direction, they moved with an instinctive rhythm, drawn by the pull of the mark on her wrist. Outside, the human force had grown bolder. Torches flickered along the hills, casting shadows that twisted like specters across the forest. Silver glinted in the dark as armor and weapons caught the firelight. The distant sound of hammers against metal, of commands barked in harsh tones, reverberated through the night. Lorcan appeared at her side, voice low. "They've breached the outer perimeter. We must move faster. Kale will hold the gates, but the younglings cannot be exposed." Ilara nodded, heart hammering. Her pulse matched the rapid thrum of the pack around her. "This way. Stay close," she whispered, guiding the pups through a narrow tunnel beneath the fortress, their bodies pressed tight to hers. The inner sanctum was cramped but secure. Ilara led the younglings inside, closing the heavy wooden doors behind them. The muffled chaos beyond made the walls shake faintly. She pressed her palm to her wrist, feeling the rhythm of the pack, their fear, their courage, and the unspoken bond that connected them to her. From the doorway, Lorcan scanned the younglings. "They are safe for now," he said. "But Kyle needs our support." "You must help him." Ilara nodded, determination settling in her chest. She followed him back toward the courtyard, where the sounds of battle grew louder. Warriors clashed with raiders, their steel ringing sharp against silver armor. Wolves darted between them, growls echoing through the chaos. Kyle was at the gates, commanding the pack with precision. His black cloak billowed as he moved, sword flashing in the dim torchlight. Every command he gave was mirrored by the wolves, and yet, even in the midst of battle, his eyes searched for her, sharp and calculating. Ilara positioned herself near the eastern wall, taking a deep breath. She could sense the younglings' fear through the mark, their instinctive flinches and suppressed growls. She called on her newfound presence, letting it flow outward, steadying their hearts, guiding them with silent authority. A group of raiders broke through the eastern gate, their armor clanging loudly. Ilara's instincts flared. She moved, voice low but firm. "Left! Stay behind the wall! Keep low!" The younglings followed, hesitation fading as trust replaced fear. Lorcan fought beside her, his movements precise, directing the pack with sharp gestures. Ilara felt the bond deepen as the wolves moved closer to her, synchronized with her heartbeat, her commands, and her courage. Together, they funneled the raiders toward Kyle, forming a living wall of defiance and strategy. A flash of steel narrowly missed her shoulder. Ilara kept moving, guiding the younglings with every ounce of strength. The pack followed, responding not only to Kyle's orders, but to her presence, their energy blending into one cohesive force. Hours passed like moments, the battle raging around them, but Ilara remained focused. Every pup, every young wolf under her care moved as she guided them. Their fear transformed into determination, their hesitations replaced by confidence. When the raiders finally withdrew, retreating into the darkness of the forest, the fortress lay battered but intact. Smoke curled lazily from torches and broken equipment. The younglings huddled together, trembling but unharmed, their eyes shining with awe and gratitude. Kyle approached her, his black cloak torn, armor scratched. His gaze lingered on her for a long moment, unreadable. "You did well," he said quietly, almost a growl. "Better than I expected. The pack survived because of you." Ilara exhaled, exhaustion weighing heavy on her shoulders, but pride and relief surged beneath it. She had faced her first true siege. She had guided the pack, protected the younglings, and stood beside the Alpha King. For the first time she felt the weight of her role, not as a girl sold for silver, but as a Luna who had begun to command respect and trust. The fortress had survived. The pack had survived, and she had survived with them. The morning after the siege, the fortress stood in a grim silence, smoke still curling up from the scorched earth at the eastern wall. Ilara stood at the edge of the courtyard, her hands resting on the stone railing as she stared out into the forest beyond. The battle had been won, but the cost was visible. Broken shields, discarded weapons, and a lingering unease that hung in the air like the smoke. Her heart ached as she looked over the younglings. They had watched the battle from the safety of the inner sanctum, but now they moved like shadows, their energy muted, their once carefree spirits dampened by the violence they had witnessed. Ilara pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the familiar pulse of the mark beneath her skin. The pack needed her, not just to guide them through physical trials, but to heal them spiritually. A soft voice broke through her thoughts. "They are waiting for you." Maeve stood behind her, her silver hair flowing like a river in the morning light. Her eyes, always gentle but wise, were now filled with concern. "The young wolves. They seek your strength, Ilara. Your presence." Ilara exhaled slowly. "I don't know if I have the strength to give them," she murmured, her gaze drifting to the ground. The weight of the battle pressed against her, threatening to crush the fragile confidence she had built. Maeve's voice was firm but soothing. "You have more strength than you realize. The pack is not just made of wolves, Ilara. It is made of spirit, and you are its Luna. You can heal them through the bond you share with them, through your connection to their hearts. They need to feel that, now more than ever." With Maeve's words echoing in her mind, Ilara walked toward the younglings. They sat in a loose circle in the courtyard, their eyes downcast, their shoulders slumped as though the weight of the world rested on them. They were young, too young to bear the scars of war, yet they had already witnessed the cruelty of the world. She knelt before them, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment she said nothing. She let the silence stretch, letting them feel her presence, her energy, her connection. They did not flinch from her. They waited, as if they too were gathering strength. One by one, the young wolves looked up at her, their eyes flickering with uncertainty, but also trust. Ilara's heart swelled with the need to help them, to show them that there was hope beyond the violence. "You've seen the worst of the world," she said softly. "But you are not alone. We are together, bound by more than just blood. We are bound by the spirit of the pack." A soft growl rippled through the group, not of anger, but of acknowledgement. Ilara smiled gently. "You are strong," she continued, her voice steady, reaching deep into the pack. "I know you are afraid, but you have already shown courage by standing with us, and now you must let that courage grow." The air around her seemed to shift. The younglings leaned in, their attention focused entirely on her, their once wavering energy now steady. Ilara's words, backed by the bond she had built with them, seemed to fill the space with a warmth that countered the cold that had settled in their hearts. "You are my pack, and I am yours," Ilara said, her voice rising with a quiet authority. "Together, we will rise above this. Together, we will heal." The young wolves stood, their movements hesitant at first, but gradually growing more confident. They circled her, each of them nuzzling her side as if seeking reassurance. Ilara felt their fear, their grief, but she also felt their hope, small but growing, like the first light of dawn breaking through a storm. From the shadows, Kyle watched the scene unfold. His piercing eyes softened as he took in the sight of Ilara with the younglings. For the first time since the battle, a faint hint of something close to respect, or perhaps something more, flickered across his face. He had been a leader for so long, but Ilara was something different, something that had the power to heal, to unify in ways he hadn't expected. The air was still thick with the scent of smoke, but Ilara knew that the pack was healing, not just from the physical wounds of battle, but from something deeper, something that had been broken long before she had arrived. She had not only protected them, she had given them the strength to stand tall again. And as the younglings circled her, the pack now more united than ever, Ilara understood the truth of her role. It wasn't about being a leader in the traditional sense. It was about being a bridge, a beacon between fear and hope, between the past and the future. She had become more than she had ever dreamed possible, and the pack had begun to trust her, to rely on her, as their Luna. The days following the siege were quiet, yet tension still hung in the air. Ilara walked the fortress walls, her gaze sweeping over the fields beyond, where the remnants of the battle lay in silence. The pack had healed physically, but she could feel the weight of the events lingering. The scent of blood and smoke had faded, but it remained etched in her memory as fresh as the night it happened. The younglings had settled, their fear replaced with cautious confidence, but Kyle, he was another matter entirely. The Alpha King, who had always seemed untouchable, now seemed to carry an invisible burden. He was still distant, his mind far away, locked in a place only he could reach. Ilara found him by the training yard one morning, his silhouette sharp against the rising sun. He stood still, staring out into the horizon, as if seeking something only he could see. She hesitated for a moment, her breath catching in her chest. There was a vulnerability about him, a rawness that no one else ever seemed to notice. He was the leader, the untouchable alpha, but beneath the mask of strength, Ilara could sense the weight of his past, the betrayal, the loss, the isolation. Slowly she approached, her footsteps light but purposeful. Kyle turned when he heard her, his expression unreadable. "You should be resting." His voice was rough, as if speaking took effort. "I'm fine," Ilara replied, stopping a few feet from him. "But you're not." He didn't respond immediately. His eyes flicked to the horizon again, as if he could see the past written there. She waited, sensing the distance between them. Finally, Kyle spoke, his voice softer than usual. You have no idea what it's like to lose everything." Ilara's heart clenched at the rawness of his words. "I know loss," she said, her voice steady. "I lost my family, my life, and now I have to lead a pack, but I'm not alone in this, Kyle." "Neither are you." He met her gaze then, his ice-blue eyes narrowing. "You don't understand. I was betrayed. She—" His voice faltered, and for a moment the fierce alpha seemed to break. He closed his eyes, inhaling sharply. Ilara stepped closer, sensing his vulnerability, the pain he tried so hard to mask. "The woman you chose, she wasn't your fault, Kyle. But I'm here." "I'm not her, and I won't leave you, not like that." He remained silent for a long moment, the weight of her words settling in the air between them. Then, slowly, Kyle exhaled, his shoulders sagging slightly, as if the burden had lifted, even just a little. "I failed her," he whispered, his voice almost lost in the wind. "And I'm afraid I'll fail you too." Ilara's heart twisted. She knew what it felt like to fear failure, to fear the weight of expectations, but she also knew the power of healing, the strength that came from shared trust. "No," she said firmly, stepping forward and placing a hand on his arm. "You won't fail me. You don't have to carry this alone." Kyle looked at her, his expression unreadable, but something in his eyes softened, the hard edges of his soul cracking just enough for her to see the man beneath the alpha. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the pack moving around them, their lives continuing despite the weight they carried. But Ilara understood something then. Healing wasn't just about physical wounds. It was about trust, about allowing someone in, about letting go of the past to create a future. And in that moment, she knew she had the power to help him heal, just as he had helped her find her place among the pack. Kyle nodded almost imperceptibly. "I don't deserve this, Ilara, but I'm grateful for you." Her heart fluttered at the admission, but she didn't speak the words she wanted to. Instead, she smiled, a quiet, genuine smile. "We'll heal together," she said softly. For the first time, Ilara felt a shift between them, something deeper, something unspoken but real. The Alpha King, who had been a symbol of strength and power, was now a man who could be healed. And she, his Luna, would be the one to help him heal, just as the pack had healed her. The past could not be erased, but the future, together, was theirs to shape. The days following their quiet conversation were filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Ilara spent her mornings walking the fortress walls, her mind occupied with the growing bond between herself and the pack. The younglings were thriving under her care, their once fearful eyes now alight with curiosity and trust. But it was the Alpha, Kale, who weighed heavily on her mind. She had seen the cracks in his armor, felt the silent burden he carried, and for the first time she felt the stirrings of something more between them. The moon hung high, a perfect silver disk, casting its pale light over the land. Ilara stood in the courtyard, the chill of the evening air nipping at her skin. Yet there was a warmth growing inside her. The pack had been through much, but they were healing. She was healing. And so, it seemed, was Kyle. He appeared in the doorway, his gaze searching for her. There was something different in the way he moved, more open than he had been before, as if the walls he'd so carefully built around himself had started to crumble. "Ilara," Kyle said, his voice a low rumble. "We need to talk." Her heart skipped a beat, but she nodded, walking toward him with steady steps. "Of course," she replied, trying to hide the flutter of anticipation in her chest. He led her to the edge of the courtyard, where the night sky stretched above them like an endless canvas. The wolves of the pack moved about, their eyes gleaming in the dark, but for a moment it was just the two of them, standing in the quiet. "I've been thinking about everything," Kyle began, his tone uncharacteristically soft. "About the pack, about you, about Jaime." Ilara turned to face him, sensing the weight in his words. "Kale, you don't have to carry this alone anymore." He paused, his gaze drifting toward the moon. "I know," he said quietly. "I've always been the one to carry the burden of leadership, but the truth is I've been afraid. Afraid of failing, of not being enough, of losing the pack." Her chest tightened as she listened, She had seen the strength, the unyielding alpha in Kyle, but this was a side of him she had not yet glimpsed. The vulnerability that he so carefully concealed was now laid bare before her. "I've seen the way the pack looks at you," Kyle continued. "You've become their Luna, not just by blood or ritual, but by spirit. You've shown them what it means to stand together, to heal and to fight. You've given them something I couldn't." His voice faltered, then steadied. "And I—" He met her gaze, his ice-blue eyes filled with a depth of emotion she had never seen before. "I need you, Ilara. Not just for the pack, but for me. I've been lost without realizing it." Ilara's heart fluttered, but she remained silent, absorbing his words. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment where everything shifted. She had always known the strength of her bond with the pack, but now she realized how much Kale's heart had been a part of it. "You've already helped me more than you know," Ilara said softly, her voice full of conviction. "We're stronger together. The pack, you and I, we're bound by more than the mark. We're bound by trust, by everything we've endured." Kyle's hand reached out, his fingers brushing lightly against hers. The touch was gentle, tentative, yet it carried an unspoken promise. "I've never been good at trusting, Ilara," he admitted, "but with you I feel like I can." Her breath caught in her throat as she gazed up at him. "We'll heal together," she whispered, her words imbued with the sincerity of everything they had overcome. Kyle nodded slowly, the weight on his shoulders lightening as if the bond between them had sealed something deeper than she could have imagined. He leaned forward, his forehead touching hers in a gesture of quiet understanding. And in that moment, the bond they shared was no longer just a symbol of survival. It was a bond of mutual trust, of healing hearts, of two people standing side by side in a world that had tried to tear them apart. "Ilara," Kyle murmured, his voice low but full of something raw, "you are the Luna. Not because of the mark, but because of who you are, and I'm proud to stand beside you." Ilara's heart swelled, warmth flooding through her chest. This was the moment she had longed for, the moment where she truly felt that her place among the pack, and with Kale, was earned not by silver or tradition, but by strength, compassion, and the healing power of their bond. She smiled, her hand finding his, and for the first time in a long while she felt complete.